Hey everyone, we know how hard it can be to keep up with the latest news in Israel. So if you haven't had the time to stay on top of what's what in the Holy Land, we're here for you. I'm Ladar Gavelazi, and this is ILTV's Weekly Review. This week marks 2 years since the start of the ground operation against the Hamas terror organization in Gaza. The massive campaign has involved tens of thousands of soldiers and reservists at a cost of 475 fallen. More from ILTV's Steve Leibovitz.
The IDF marked 2 years since the start of the ground offensive in Gaza on October 27, 2023, releasing video and photographs from the battlefields. The operation began 20 days after the Hamas-led October 7th massacre, when terrorists killed some 1,200 people, mostly civilians, and abducted 251 hostages into Gaza. Over the past 2 years, IDF troops have operated in almost every part of the Strip, including northern Gaza, Gaza City, Khan Yunis, and Rafah, in a massive campaign involving tens of thousands of soldiers and reservists. Since the start of the ground offensive, 475 have been killed in Gaza and in operations along the border. The IDF estimates it's eliminated more than 22,000 Hamas combatants in Gaza, in addition to 1,600 terrorists killed inside Israel during and after the October 7th massacre. The Hamas-run Gaza Health Ministry claims more than 68,000 people have been killed or are presumed dead in the fighting, a figure that cannot be verified and does not distinguish between civilians and terrorists. The IDF issued a statement saying, 2 years since the beginning of the ground operation in Gaza, IDF troops have continued to eliminate threats, dismantle Hamas terror infrastructure, and work to bring every hostage home. Following 2 years of intense fighting, Israel and Hamas earlier this month agreed to a U.S.-brokered ceasefire that saw U.S. troops partially withdraw from Gaza, leaving the army in control of roughly half the territory.
After a day of deadly warfare, the fragile U.S.-brokered ceasefire is now back on. The IDF announcement came after a directive from the political echelon. The ceasefire returns a day after an IDF soldier was killed in a terror attack in Rafah, and Israel retaliated with massive airstrikes with heavy losses. The Israeli retaliation for the Hamas ceasefire infraction have stopped for now, and the fragile U.S.-brokered ceasefire is back in place. More on this from ILTV's Steve Leibovitz.
Gaza's Hamas-run civil defense agency says at least 50 people were killed and 200 wounded in Israeli airstrikes. The numbers could not be independently confirmed. The order to strike came from Prime Minister Netanyahu directly, who ordered the army to carry out powerful attacks due to a string of ceasefire violations by Hamas. According to the army, the IDF is returning fire in order to stop Hamas from further endangering soldiers on the Israeli side of the Yellow Line in Gaza. Defense Minister Katz said that Hamas terrorists will pay a heavy price for attacking IDF soldiers and violating the agreement to return hostage remains. Israeli security officials said the government is considering options in case Hamas fails to deliver on returning the hostage remains, including extending operational control. The army announced that an IDF reservist was killed in yesterday's attack carried out by Palestinian terror operatives against troops stationed in the Rafah area of the southern Gaza Strip. The slain soldier was named as Master Sergeant Reserve Yonah Effie Feldbaum, 37, from the community of Neria in the Binyamin Regional Council. He leaves a wife and 5 children. According to an initial IDF probe, the terror operatives launched RPGs and carried out sniper fire against the forces who are operating in Rafah's Janina neighborhood. The area is located on the eastern side of the Yellow Line, an area under Israeli control as part of the ceasefire. The IDF has assessed that there are terror operatives holed up in a pocket in the area. As troops work to clear the neighborhood of Hamas infrastructure, operatives emerged from a tunnel and carried out the attack. Last week, 2 soldiers were killed in a similar attack in the same neighborhood. Israel has blamed Hamas for both attacks. Hamas denies a connection to either one. It's day 754 of the war in Gaza. Israeli retaliation for the Hamas ceasefire infractions has stopped for now, and the fragile U.S.-brokered ceasefire is back in place. The IDF announced that the ceasefire in the Gaza Strip is now once again in effect, following a series of significant strikes targeting Hamas targets and operatives. The announcement went on in accordance with the directive of the political echelon and following a series of strikes in which dozens of terror targets and terrorists were struck. The IDF has begun the renewed enforcement of the ceasefire after Hamas violated it.
And moving on, the U.S. has reportedly begun flying drones over Gaza to provide Washington an independent assessment of developments and to support the Civil Military Coordination Center, or CMCC, now operating under U.S. leadership from Kiryat Gat in Israel. More from ILTV's Devo Klein.
According to the New York Times, the U.S. military is flying the spy drones over Gaza with Israel's consent. The drones are reportedly operated from the CMCC Coordination Center. They are tasked with overseeing humanitarian, logistical, and security aid into Gaza as part of the post-war stabilization effort. About 200 American military personnel have been deployed to help run the facility, which also includes troops from Jordan, the UK, Germany, Denmark, Canada, Australia, France, Spain, and the UAE. U.S. Central Command stressed that American forces will not enter Gaza itself. The surveillance flight suggests that the administration wants to know what's happening in the enclave, independent of Israeli intelligence. According to quoted officials, it's part of a broader effort to ensure that both Hamas and Israel are complying with the fragile ceasefire. Throughout the war, the IDF has relied heavily on drones for intelligence collection in its campaign against Hamas. However, the new U.S. flights suggest that Washington now seeks an independent, first-hand understanding of the situation on the ground. The U.S. State Department and the IDF declined to comment on the report. The reported move underscores U.S. determination to safeguard the peace framework brokered by President Donald Trump and his team, led by Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and Senior Advisor Jared Kushner. Meanwhile, anti-Hamas militia leaders in Gaza announced their opposition to any role for Turkey or Qatar in post-war governance, accusing both countries of supporting Hamas and calling them, quote, war criminals. The statement came from Hussam al-Astal, a clan leader in Khan Yunis, who said only those helping fight Hamas would be welcomed. Under the ceasefire, some areas where these clans operate remain under Israeli control. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu has previously acknowledged providing arms to Palestinian groups opposing Hamas, though without naming them directly.
Defense officials reportedly told Israeli lawmakers that a U.S.-led multinational force planned to stabilize Gaza after the war may include troops from Pakistan. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu insists that Israel will have veto power if it opposes certain nations from sending forces. More on this from ILTV's Devo Klein.
According to Ynet, the U.S.-led international force in Gaza would include soldiers from Indonesia and Azerbaijan. Indonesia had already previously offered to send troops, and Azerbaijan had also agreed to contribute. And the possible participation of Pakistani soldiers was disclosed for the first time during a closed-door briefing last week. Israel has already made it clear that troops from Turkey would not be acceptable. Prime Minister Netanyahu told the cabinet that Israel will have an effective veto on which international forces enter Gaza.
אנחנו שולטים בביטחון שלנו, ואנחנו גם הבהרנו שביחס לכוחות בינלאומיים, ישראל תקבע איזה כוחות אינם מקובלים עלינו, וכך אנחנו פועלים ונמשיך לפעול. זה כמובן מקובל גם על ארצות הברית, כפי שנציגי הבכירים ביותר הבהירו בימים האחרונים. ישראל היא מדינה עצמאית, אנחנו נגן על עצמנו בכוחות עצמנו, ואנחנו נמשיך לשלוט בגורלנו.
The Prime Minister also took time to reject claims that officials in Washington and not Jerusalem are making all the key security decisions for Israel.
בחודש האחרון אנחנו עדים לטענות מגוחכות ביחס ליחסים בין ארצות הברית וישראל. כשהייתי בוושינגטון נאמר שם שאני שולט בממשל האמריקני, אני מכתיב לו את המדיניות הביטחונית שלו. עכשיו טוענים את ההפך, הממשל האמריקני שולט בי והוא מכתיב את המדיניות הביטחונית של ישראל. לא זה נכון ולא זה נכון. ישראל היא מדינה עצמאית, ארצות הברית היא מדינה עצמאית, היחסים בינינו הם יחסים של שותפים.
Netanyahu says that Israel remains firmly in control of its security decisions and that Jerusalem will have the final say on which international forces are permitted in Gaza. The Prime Minister stressed that the veto power is accepted by the United States, reaffirming Israel's independence in defending its interests and determining its own security future.
And joining us now with more on the latest developments in Gaza is Yoni Ben Menachem of the Jerusalem Center for Security and Foreign Affairs. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So Hamas is clearly playing games, engaging in psychological warfare, however you want to call it. But at the end of the day, they are in breach of the ceasefire agreement. So what happens now, and what should Israel do, or what can Israel do at this stage?
Israel can retaliate, but the Israeli retaliation will be limited because Israel doesn't want to appear as the one who's violating or trying to harm the peace plan of President Trump. So everything has to be coordinated, fully coordinated between Israel and the United States. And this is what is going to happen. There's a meeting now held by Prime Minister Netanyahu to discuss the various possibilities how to retaliate. And after the decision will be taken, Israel will consult with the Americans and get the approval. And then we will see the Israeli retaliation.
And now this ceasefire deal has very clear stages. The first stage is, of course, the release of all the hostages. That still hasn't happened. And only once all the hostages are brought back, the deal is supposed to move to the next stage. Now, Hamas is saying it doesn't know where the hostages are, a claim Israel, of course, disputes. What are the chances that this, this great peace deal will actually move ahead to another stage without Israel having to make more concessions?
Look, I think that eventually Hamas is in a big problem. By the way, there is a video of the IDF Israeli drone who shot the whole deception campaign on the ground by Hamas. How they are bringing the body of one of the Israeli hostages and bury it on the ground in the ground, and they call the Red Cross as if they had now discovered the body. So this will be presented all over the world, and I think that also President Trump will relate to it, and this is a very strong proof against Hamas. The bottom line is that what we need out of this peace plan of Trump is only the implementation of the first stage, which means returning all the hostages. Nobody in Israel believes that we can move forward to the second stage of this plan because Hamas will never disarm, and the only force that can fully disarm Hamas is the IDF. And eventually, the estimation in Israel that we will get to this point, it's only a matter of time. But what we have to do is hurry up and get all the hostages back. Then we will have a free hand to take care of Hamas, handle Hamas deceptions and the violations of the peace plan of Trump.
And what is happening inside of Gaza now? Is Hamas simply getting stronger with every passing day?
Of course, every day that there's no IDF attacks, they are rebuilding their military infrastructure, they are recruiting more people to the military wing ranks, and they are trying to manufacture inside the tunnels rockets and other means, other weapons, so they can use it in the future against the IDF and against Israel. So they are now gaining time because they are having this deception campaign. But, everything will come to its end. Eventually, President Trump will ask Turkey and Qatar, who are the ones who promised Trump that Hamas will implement the first stage of its plan. He will ask them, what did you do? Why aren't you sticking to your promises? And they will have to deliver. So I think it's only a matter of time until we will finish with this story.
Yoni Ben Menachem, thank you so much for joining us today and for your insights.
Thank you. Thank you.
New developments tonight in the hostage return efforts. Hamas claims to have found the body of an Israeli hostage still in Gaza, but is now refusing to hand it over. The group says it is halting all transfers following what it calls Israeli violations of the ceasefire. Let's now go to ILTV correspondent India Naftali for more. India?
Hi, Sivan. What was supposed to be another step towards closure has turned into fresh uncertainty. Hamas says it located a body belonging to one of the 13 Israeli hostages still in Gaza and had planned to deliver it to the Red Cross last night. But after Israeli airstrikes in Rafah, the terror group says it will not hand over the body, claiming Israel breached the ceasefire.
The Saudi Al-Hadath network reported that Hamas recovered what claimed were 2 hostage bodies from tunnels in Khan Yunis, including one that was to be returned the same night it was discovered. Hamas then canceled the transfer, saying it was responding to a series of Israeli violations. Earlier on Tuesday, Hamas terrorists had opened fire on Israeli troops near Rafah, killing one IDF reservist. After security consultations, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu ordered powerful strikes in response, calling Hamas's attack a blatant ceasefire breach. The escalation comes just hours after the IDF released drone footage exposing what it's called a staged body discovery. The video showed Hamas operatives burying remains belonging to Ofir Tsarfati, an Israeli hostage whose body had already been discovered 2 years ago, and then pretending to unearth his remains before handing them to the Red Cross.
I can confirm to you today that Hamas dug a hole in the ground yesterday, placed the partial remains of Ofir inside of it, covered it back up with dirt, and handed it over to the Red Cross. The IDF caught the entire sequence of events on a military drone.
Ofir's family says the incident was a cruel manipulation, forcing them to reopen his grave for the 3rd time. His mother, Rachel Tsarfati, called it continuous emotional abuse and a wound that keeps reopening. Under the terms of the ceasefire agreement, Hamas was required to return all hostages, living and dead, within 72 hours. The group released all 20 living hostages, but has failed to return all the deceased. So far, Hamas has returned 15 of the 28 fallen hostages, leaving 13 bodies in Gaza. Israeli officials say Hamas knows where most of them are, but is deliberately delaying.
Hamas is warning that any new airstrikes in Gaza will hinder future handovers, while Israel says the group is using the dead as a bargaining chip. And as both sides trade accusations, families of the fallen remain in distress. It's become very apparent that without the return of every hostage, dead or alive, the peace plan cannot move forward. Sivan, back to you.
Thank you very much, India.
And this next story is really unbelievable. Imagine going on vacation to a 5-star luxury resort only to share a swim in the pool with a murderer, or stand in line at the buffet with a man who orchestrated the bombings of innocent civilians. Well, that is the experience of some tourists, according to a new report in the British Daily Mail, which claims that 154 terrorists deported under the Gaza ceasefire are staying at a 5-star hotel in Cairo. According to the report, the former prisoners released by Israel in exchange for hostages after the onset of the war on October 7, 2023, were sent to Egypt and appear to be living in luxury at the Renaissance Cairo Mirage Hotel, a Marriott-managed property near Cairo. Among them are convicted former members of Hamas, Fatah, and other terror groups convicted of murdering Israeli civilians or security forces. The identified prisoners were seen withdrawing cash from ATMs at the hotel, celebrating, posing for photos with supporters, and some are reportedly applying for permanent residency with the aim of moving to Qatar, Turkey, or Tunisia. Israeli security experts warn that the unrestricted relocation and networking of these individuals poses a potential global terror threat, since they can reconnect with their organizations and rebuild terror infrastructure abroad. But I also want to ask, Egypt is supposed to be a central partner in U.S. President Trump's Great Peace Plan. So why is it hosting these mass murderers and terrorists? Why at a 5-star hotel in the lap of luxury, especially at a time when we know how Hamas hosted Israeli hostages in dungeons underground? It seems the Marriott chain and the Egyptians have some explaining to do. We open with a major story out of Israel as the Mossad has revealed the identity of the mastermind behind an international network allegedly responsible for attempted attacks and kidnappings against Israelis and Jews around the world. Sardar Amal, head of Unit 11,000 with the Islamic Republic's Quds Force, established a covert unit responsible for carrying out acts of terrorism against Jewish institutions and individuals, both in Israel and abroad, including in Europe and in Australia. According to the Mossad, the statement, the network conducted acts of vandalism and arson attacks against Jewish-owned businesses, Chabad centers, and synagogues, as well as direct physical violence against Jewish figures. Many of the planned attacks were thwarted, leading to the revelation of this network. Additionally, the Mossad said the Iranian terror network used compartmentalized cells, foreign national recruits, and criminal proxies to avoid a direct connection to the Iranian regime. And turning now to Judea and Samaria, where the IDF announced that it has foiled an imminent planned terror attack. 3 Palestinian terror operatives were reportedly killed by the Amam counterterrorism snipers during a raid in the northern West Bank village of Kfar Kud, near Jenin. Police say the operation was based on intelligence from the Shin Bet with IDF support to foil an imminent terror attack. The 3 operatives were shot after emerging from a cave used by the cell. Shortly after, the Israeli Air Force struck the same site to destroy the cave, and the IDF confirmed carrying out an airstrike in the Jenin area. And moving on, the UN Security Council met to discuss the situation in Gaza. The Israeli ambassador to the UN, Danny Danon, told the UN Security Council that it doesn't understand the reality on the ground in the Gaza Strip. Danon accused the Council of implicitly approving of Hamas due to the global body's dangerous silence on the public executions. Most diplomats attending the meeting expressed support for the ceasefire while urging the delivery of more aid and advancing the American-Israeli Arab peace plan. Meanwhile, Mike Waltz, the U.S. ambassador to the world body, said that Hamas has not fulfilled its obligations under the deal. Washington is reportedly crafting a resolution in support of the peace plan.
But our struggle is not over. There can be no peace, no future, and no rebuilding of Gaza while terror still remains. 13 fallen hostages remain in Hamas's hands. We will bring them home and give them the dignity they deserve. The world must keep the pressure where it belongs, on Hamas, to return the hostages, to lay down its weapons, and to honor the peace plan it signed.
For more of the latest updates from Israel, make sure to subscribe to our newsletter at iltv.tv or download the ILTV Plus app. That's it for ILTV's weekly review. See you next week.